What did Granny do? Granny interceded all the time. Granny would come over here and she'd cook for folks. Granny would feed people. Nobody ever knew much about Granny. Nobody paid a lot of attention to what she did. They say, oh, she's a good old saint of God. Granny goes up there and has this huge reward that she didn't know she was getting. And she turns to the congregation of whoever's out there, multitudes, and there she has her crown. Now, someone said to me one time, they said, oh, I don't worry about crowns. I just want to make it to heaven. Well, let's put you there then. Let's put you up there. Let's put you up there and see what it's going to feel like. When you go up, and there's a little book you've got, and all of a sudden, you're one of those, you just went to church when you wanted. You always complained when an offering was being received. You never gave a penny. Ah, yeah, you say you loved God. You got saved when you were a kid. Never did much. That book burns. And you have to turn and face people. And they all know you did nothing. Now that would be pressure in the secular world in a business. For them to be giving after 30 years of work to their top workers. And you're up there in line and they get to you and say, well, according to the records, you don't get anything. The embarrassment and the shame that you will experience. Because here's what the Lord told me one time. He said, here's the significance of getting a crown. He said, do you remember reading where the elders laid down their crowns before the Lamb? Yes, sir. He said, son, if you don't have a crown, you never have anything to give back to me in eternity. He said, you have nothing to show me. You've got nothing to lay down at my feet. And I'll look at you forever and know you wasted your life. Oh, you were saved. You barely made it in. But you wasted a perfectly good life that could have done something for God. I normally would not tell this. I have told this before. But I haven't told it in such a long time, and I'll get back to this third part in just a second. But a friend of mine who's in the ministry knows this man. And years ago he told me a story, and I'm going to give you the brief version of it. Fellow was very sick, and he had double pneumonia. He was a minister. And he went out in the spirit and had something very bizarre happen. This was actually in the if I'm not mistaken, it was the 1980s, early 80s when this happened. But the story goes that the man went out in the spirit and said when he went out, he said he saw a man standing beside him that he recognized. He'd been in a car wreck. And this was an angel that stood with him in the car wreck that helped him get through an accident. And he knew it was an angel. And they're in a long line. It's like a tunnel. And they're in a long line. And there's a person and another one, a person and another one. And it's like everybody has this messenger, like an angel beside him. And he said, there I am. I'm looking down. I'm holding some books. And I said, where am I? What am I doing here? Where am I? Said the angel said nothing to me. Scene changed. We all start moving and we get into this. He said the only way to describe it, he described it to me like a massive arena. It was layered, like choir risers, you know. And it was round, and there would be another group around, hundreds of thousands, just a massive, countless number of people there. And said, oddly enough, there in front of them, everybody had books. Some had one, some had little tiny ones, some had a big stack. He said, in fact, I looked at a preacher that I knew who was very famous, and he had books way up there, and I thought, man, wow. But he didn't know what was going to happen. A throne came up out of the floor. And when that throne appeared, the fear hit everybody in the place. The back of the throne opened. He said the only way he could describe it is like burning angels of fire came from the back of that throne and swept across that arena as high up as you could see. And it set the books on fire. And he said it blew him away when right near this preacher was a a godly-looking woman, like a patriarch. You could tell there was something about her. She was one of those kind of praying. She prayed all of her life. He said, I could discern it. She had one little book, and that book turned to the most beautiful gemstones, and the preacher's book dissolved into ash. And he started crying. He started crying. He said he saw the preacher. He thought, how could that be possible? This guy's reaching the world. This can't be possible. This makes no sense. The scene changed. They have another book. And he said this time they go into this beautiful chamber. And it's Jesus himself in the beautiful outfit. And he's got a scepter in his hand. And he's got an altar. There's a beautiful golden altar there. He said, here's this woman again. This saintly woman. Got her little book. Got gemstones in one hand and another little book in the other. And she's just praising the Lord. And she lays her book down. And Jesus steps back. He takes the scepter and touches the book. And fire hits it. When fire hit that woman's book, liquid gold started pouring over that altar. And this man said, he said, the fellow told me that Jesus knelt down behind that altar and took that gold with his hand and started forming something and started placing those stones a certain way. And when he came up, he had a handmade crown. And he had her lean over and he put it on her head. He said, daughter, well done. You've been faithful over a few things. I'll make you rule over many. He made the crown. It wasn't a pre-made thing. You know, I used to say where the crown's coming from. It was handmade. But he said the thing that shocked him was the preacher. The preacher comes in with another stack of books, sits them on the altar. They burn to ashes. And the Lord never did look at that preacher and say, well done. He just said, enter into rest. Only if you have the reward are you told, well done. Otherwise, you just enter in. And some people, the Bible said, remember the Bible said, let no man take your crown? This man tried to warn this preacher of his vision, and the man never listened. And he fell into sin and lost his ministry. True story. The Bema is going to be a very important time because it's going to be the time that what you did in your body, you will give an account for. If you were just an old mean gossip and you lied on people and you said things you shouldn't say, and then you'd, oh God, I'm sorry, but you never made it right with the person, you'll answer to the God on that day. There'll be a lot of answering to God about things that have happened. But the rewards will be given, and either a person will have or will not have at the Bema. When the Bema is concluded, the next thing we see for the saints, because the Bema, I believe, actually goes on for quite some time. It's not a day thing. The last thing that happens for believers in heaven is called the marriage supper of the Lamb. Let us be glad and rejoice and give glory to Him, for the marriage of the Lamb has come. His wife has made herself ready. It was given to her, granted to her to be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the saints. Then he said to me, right, blessed are those who were called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said, these are true sayings. Now I want to tell you something about this supper that is quite interesting, and it's got to do with the cup. If you know anything about a Jewish Passover, there are 4 cups used at a Passover. And each cup is named and identified. And each cup, when the father of the house is performing the Seder Passover of the service, he holds up the cup, and sometimes he'll dip his finger in it and put it on the table, and that represents the wrath of God coming on the Egyptians. But there's always one that was intriguing to me, and that was cup number 4. Cup number 4 traditionally was turned upside down on the table, and a child is sent, after they go through the first 3 cups, a child is sent to go to the door to see if Elijah the prophet is outside announcing the coming of the Messiah. And the reason they leave that cup that way is hopefully that some Jewish family in the world is going to have Elijah come by their house and walk in there and turn that cup right side up. Now, when that cup is not turned, the father will then go into a ceremony of which they use that cup. When Jesus was at the Passover supper, we call it the Lord's Supper or the Last Supper. You got to read it very carefully to understand it. He went through all of these cups. He said, this is the cup of the New Testament. Then he says, the cup I'm going to drink from of suffering, you're not going to be able to drink from it. He actually names 3. There are 3 places. And then he took the cup and drank from it at the end of the supper. But he makes a statement. Ooh, Lord have mercy. He makes a statement. And he says this, I will not drink from this cup again until I drink it anew with you in the kingdom. This cup is called, you're going to love